Hey everybody, it's Eugene. I'm the DM of the Long Strange Cantrips March of Progress campaign, and I'm back with another recap, this one for Session 3 of our campaign, which I think was a rollicking good time, as far as I'm concerned. This one began with the party waking up on the morning after the rather eventful maiden voyage of the RNS Coltung, in which the group foiled a sabotage attempt by none other than Duchess Ethelyn of Shale, sister of King Aedan, as well as her handmaiden and a few henchmen and would-be saboteurs. The party now had the gratitude of the King Aedan, and his chief advisor, Harkover Lee, as well as Royal Homeland Constabulary Assistant Chief Inspector, Stover Delft. That said, the evening was not a complete success, as Ekthos and Ren's intervention on behalf of Ume, and in particular Ren trying to charm their boss to protect Ume, cost the duo their jobs at the Bureau of Modern Contraptions and Utilities. Luckily for them, in recognition of their fine, albeit unsubtle work aboard the Coltung, Stover invited them to join their erstwhile shipmates for the next part of the journey as essentially contractors. Egberticus and Ume, meanwhile, were also asked to join on assignment from their typical positions with the Rasuri Naval Service. So here in the morning, about 5 minutes before they had to meet at the RHC headquarters, Dipnip roused Brachus from sleep, per their usual routine, and the pair headed off, as did the others. Egberticus, of course, had not been with the group. He had not spent the night at the inn, preferring his own Spartan abode. And Ekthos, before setting off, was visited by a messenger who relayed a package that Ekthos had apparently received at his office at the Bureau shortly before being summarily fired. His former boss curtly forwarded it on. Without even having to open it, Ekthos could discern its contents, the very gem he had been awaiting to complete his latest project. But that would have to wait, as the party arrived at Stover Delft's office within the RHC's Flint headquarters. Stover was there, now familiar to all, but so was a tiefling Danoran woman wearing regal finery and bearing a blade at her hip. She introduced herself as Leah Jair, Minister of Outsiders for Danor, and evidently the progeny of the august, illustrious Jair family, one of Danor's most distinguished bloodlines. Without explanation, Leah greeted the party with a puzzle, placing figurines of towers, rings, and strings on a table. True to its name, it was very puzzling, but Dipnip managed to recall this puzzle from one of his many prior lifetimes, and in particular, he remembered that it is entirely impossible to solve under the conditions imposed by Jair. Leah seemed mildly impressed that the group at least knew its limitations in this regard, and turned to the substance of the matter. As it turned out, Duchess Ethelyn fled from the Coltung to a Danoran holdfast known as Axis Island, situated amid the long-disputed Yarosal archipelago, with all of the island's magical protections and safeguards. It is unclear how she was able to capture it with just a handful of forces. Axis Island was largely unremarkable, but for its connection to Danoran industrial production, particularly since the Fourth Yarosal War, and some long-circulating superstitious rumors about unusual metaphysical events during the Yarosal Wars. Some veterans even claimed that the island itself seemed to fight back against both armies' incursions. Jair reminded the party that under the Danoran constitution and its strictures, if Ethelyn, a Rasuri, albeit a rebellious one, was not removed from the island within 3 days, Danor would have no choice but to declare war in order to retake the island because it was being occupied by a foreign nation, which would, of course, shatter the two nations' fragile peace and usher in more needless bloodshed and destruction. Therefore, she, Delft, and the Risuri military hatched a hasty plan to remove the Duchess. Namely, the Risuri fleet would sail to Axis Island and lie in wait just out of reach and sight of the island fortress's guns, where Duchess Ethelyn was holed up. The fleet would then rely on a crack team of RHC operatives, the Fox Team 4, to open the island fortress's seawall, allowing the fleet to sail into the fortress harbor and swiftly retake it with overwhelming force. The party, in turn, would help assess the fallout and potentially question the Duchess once she's captured, question her accomplices, given their unique perspective as witnesses to the Coltung's would-be sabotage. This would be both the nation's best shot at avoiding an international incident or worse, and a way to capture the Duchess without her being injured, which of course the king was concerned with. The party duly accepted this mission, and Minister Jair departed with a swoop of her cloak and a shallow bow, but not before asking an additional favor. If the party encountered her nephew, Nathan Jair, who was holed up somewhere on the island, having been posted there on a research assignment, she would appreciate that he be brought to safety. Upon her departure, Stover expressed some misgivings about the mission, but agreed that it was in the best interests of Risur. He resolved that the party would sail aboard one of the fastest ships in the fleet, the nimble RNS Impossible, helmed by none other than legendary Captain Rutger Smith, known around Risur for his heroics, with Ren acting as the ship's skyseer to speed them toward the island in just 2 days, hopefully, in order to meet the tight timeline. He then summoned the quartermaster of the RHC, Lydia, who provided the party their customary stipends and outfitted them with potions of water breathing, potions of healing, and a pair of slippers of spider climbing for Dipnip, who apparently wanted them for some reason. Egberticus took the opportunity to make a more exotic request, a never-ending milk jug. Lydia said she would do her best to procure one within the next few days, but not in time for their departure. Egberticus would have to make do with a substitute, copious mundane jugs of milk to be loaded onto the Impossible. Before departing, the party made one last stop, somewhat disruptively, albeit inadvertently so, visiting the Chapel of Our Humble Father, which was dedicated to Triegenes and the Pentonian Church. Egberticus, a zealous adherent of the church, was keen to have the milk and their whole enterprise receive Triegenes' blessing, and the rest of the group felt that, hey, couldn't hurt to do the same. While the deacon was initially put off by the distinctly, shall we say, eclectic mix of individuals represented by the group, he dutifully imparted the blessing and the group set sail. The journey was relatively unremarkable and speedy, thanks in part to Ren's able navigation. Ume and Egberticus naturally kept the crew well sated and slaked, while Ekthos put the finishing touches on his latest creation, Mekthos, a homunculus servant. Captain Smith took a particular interest in Dipnip, given his many years of life, but Dipnip was, as usual, not particularly interested in discussing it, regarding near immortality as more a curse than a blessing. Before long, the Impossible spotted Axis Island from among the various neighboring Yarosol Isles and approached its rocky shoreline, and there, floating about a kilometer away from shore, the party rendezvoused with the Fox Team 4. This elite RHC unit turned out to be a more colorful bunch than expected, but undeniably competent. They detailed their plan to swim through a sea cave onto the island itself, then use a scroll of pass wall to penetrate the fortress at a particular point. As Minister Jair said, they would then open the seawall and allow the fleet to pass undeterred. To keep the party apprised of their status, the Fox Team 4 would hold one end of a rope as they progressed through the sea cave, tugging intermittently to show progress, then steadily to confirm that the coast was clear, allowing the party to follow as a second advance team shortly behind. However, after a few minutes, the party felt a strong tremor, then frantic pulling on the rope. Thinking that the situation had deteriorated, the party drank their potions of water breathing and dove in toward the island. Partway through the undersea tunnel, the party discovered that the Fox Team 4 had been crushed by dislodged stones. All but one were dead. The party tried but ultimately failed to remove the large stone, pinning the one down, and he handed a scroll to Ren, then begged the party to quickly end his life before the sharks did the same. Brachus obliged with very little hesitation, removing his head with a single swipe of his axe. The party then proceeded cautiously through the tunnel, fearing that the stones may have been triggered by some sort of trap, but determined to carry on the mission in the Fox Team 4's stead. They emerged in a sea cave dominated by this large central obelisk, a splinter of white plunging toward the high domed ceiling, and after just beginning to explore and contemplate the potential ramifications of Brachus granting the Fox Team 4 agents' wish, the party was accosted by a crazed man who took cover and began shooting at them, shouting in Denoran. He seemed to be assisted by some sort of shadow creature and an earth elemental who followed his commands and defended him. Dipnip made excellent use of his new slippers, climbing easily up the rocky wall to their assailant, and Ren deftly navigated the cave's ramshackle planks and ladders as an imposing grizzly bear. With some difficulty, the party defeated the trio and sat down for a much-needed breather as Ume contemplated the pendants discovered on the man's lifeless body. With the cave entrance beckoning them and breathing the island's stultifying tropical air upon them, the party made a fire and tended to their wounds. And that was where we left off. You can find some highlights and, of course, the full episodes themselves here and on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/longstrangecantrip. And you can find my DM notes here as well, where I talk through some of the sort of spoilerific moments, what I expected and what I didn't, and how you could run a similar campaign. So with that said, I will see you guys for the summary of episode 4. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please click the little thumb. If you like this channel, please hit subscribe. And please do follow us on Twitch if you want to watch us live every other week. Thanks. Bye.